Hello and welcome to a quick-fire noobs guide to Beyond All Reasons 2 favourite and most popular maps. This here is Supreme Isthmus, and we will get straight in with the front line.
Battle started.
Now then, this player here, if you're spawning here, it is considered the front line. I will just quickly put out there that you want to be spawning in between these three metal extractors so that you can claim them all. In fact, every spawn has 3 metal extractors in a diamond tier so that you know roughly where you're supposed to spawn. Now then, this is the front line on the coast here, on the short coast, and this is the front line on the long coast. As this player here, your job is to make sure that you push out into here with as many units as possible, so just produce as many units as you can. Don't worry about ecoing, your team will have you covered for that. And essentially, you need to push as far up on the coast as you can, build static defense, and spam units. Make sure that you try not to let any enemy units come past you here, so you need to make sure that you spread out throughout the coast. And this geo is yours a little bit later on into the game, but I wouldn't worry about that too early. Make sure that you defend and make a wall. Regardless of whether you go bots, whether you go vehicles, I probably wouldn't advise hovers, and obviously I wouldn't say go sea, but bots, vehicles are fine. It doesn't make a difference which unit you amass, as long as you are producing units, as long as you're pumping metal into units and not into economy. Once you have your lab done, walk your commander up here, take this metal, and use your commander on the front line and defend any way necessary. Now then, this player here, you're going to spawn in between these 3 metal extractors, take metal, then build your lab. So I'd prefer this player to actually take this metal first, then build the lab. Again, you are a frontline player, so you're going to be pushing your commander down here to take these, and you are going to be pushing units to build a wall along here. Now you have a considerably larger area to cover. You do not have more competition because you are going to be faced against this player here, so this is your direct competition, whereas this player here, his direct competition is here. But you are going to be holding this front line together. Now then, you need to make sure that you spread units out and down here so that you cover the full length of it, because the last thing you want is units being able to slip past you along the coast and go for your backline players. So again, very similar to this player, you want to be producing as many units as possible, as many defenses as possible, and walking your commander up here to build a wall of defense. Just behind that, you've got the geo player. You're going to be relying on this player to keep you safe while you get your geothermal up. You're going to use that energy to eco up to T2, and then you are going to be either handing T2 constructors out to these players so that they can upgrade their mexes, or you are going to be going for T2 units and going for the first big push. Whether that's a Tsar Rush, whether it's snipers, whether it's starlights, whether it's hounds, a group of hounds, you are the one that is going to make the first attack. And you want to make it as early as possible. There's quite a few build orders floating around the internet that you should maybe take a look at, because the earlier you can hit with a Tsar or with starlights, the more damage you're going to do. A lot of the times, if you have a good player in this position and they do a first hit time and attack push like that, such as with the Tsar, you are going to essentially just win the game off of that. So that is the job of this player here. Again, if you go for T2 units, and then a little bit later you can go for the T2 cons to hand out so that they can upgrade their mexes. Ooh, a little bit of a leak here by this player. He needs to get more units up and more turrets up. The con turrets, there's not a whole lot of need for them. He doesn't have enough energy to actually use them. Luckily, this grunt is a one-shot, and this player still has a lab. Otherwise, this player could be in quite a lot of trouble. So that's something to look out for. Ooh, and there's a leak here. Even if it's just a single grunt, this game, the economy buildings are so weak, flimsy, and volatile. You just saw them all explode there, even though only one windmill went down. That even just a single grunt can deal a significant amount of damage. So you need to be very careful. You need to be pushing units up, and you need to be holding your line. This position here is going to be a support. So whereas this position is going to be the first big push, this position here is going to cover any leaks. So as you can see here, he's producing units to the front line because he saw this player was leaking, and he is actually transferring ownership of those units to these players just to help them defend a little bit better. Now the way you do this is you select one of your units, and then down here next to the player you want to give it to, so say I wanted to give it to Loft's Paradise, if I was playing, I would see a little grey box with 2 arrows in it. You double click that with the unit highlighted, and it will transfer ownership to that person. Now this player, if your front line is doing okay, such as this side, this player is more than happy to go into either hovers, or they can eco, or they can go into amphibious units and try and make a push up the sea to go for the geo. It's essentially going around the frontliners, or alternatively you can produce units and assist your front line to try and make a breakthrough. So this is mirrored. All the maps are, well, pretty much all of the maps for this game are mirrored. So this player here is mirrored to this player here. This player here is mirrored to this player here. And that player there is that player there. The sides of the map are pretty much identical, so there isn't really a advantage on either side of the spawns. Now then, this player up here. You're going to spawn up here, take the mexes, but you are immediately going to go into the ocean. It is your job to contest this ocean, okay? So you need to be building non-stop boats, non-stop subs, non-stop ships. It doesn't really matter. It matters a little bit more than maybe on land, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot when you're very first starting out. If you build non-stop boats, you will win the sea. I can guarantee you that. As you see, this player's actually gone hovers, so a little bit of a tidbit. Submarines, unfortunately, they can't shoot torpedoes at hovers because hovers hover on top of the water. So you're going to be wanting boats for that. We've got a dolphin coming in. So it's your job to take the ocean and secure that. You're going to have a lot of metal if you manage to get that going. Down here, so the opposite side to that would be this orange player here. Down here, this position here is considerably reserved for often the highest skill player on your team. And that's because it's the most difficult. You start up here with 3 mexes. You have another mex there. You have 2 more mexes down here. And then you also have a geo. But the thing about this position is you need to be contesting this water. So not only have you got to build a land base, you've also got to build a water base. As you can see, this player here has gone for hovers down here. I would recommend boats. This is quite a low skill lobby. So this is definitely something that you will see in your games. But as you can see here, he's going into a naval yard. The reason I say don't go hovers is because boats will beat hovers any day. The reason hovers are so expensive is because they can go on land. But if you're not planning to take these and rush onto land, then the boats are going to beat them pound for pound. Now again, this is going to be probably reserved for the highest skill player, and that's simply because it is so difficult. But you do need to build a naval yard. So this player has opted to build it down here. A lot of times you'll see the commander walk here and build it here, simply because it is a shorter walk and there are mexes here and here for him to claim. Now then, this is the back line. So these are arguably the safest spots on Supreme Isthmus. This one here is often reserved for the air player, so the players that's going to build an air lab and get fighters and stuff out and bombers. And this spot is going to be reserved for the eco player, so the player that is going to go straight economy, build no units, go up to T2 and start handing out T2 constructors. The reason this is so big is because if you take a look at this metals extractor here, it is currently producing 2.3, but as soon as you upgrade it, it produces 9.2. That is 4 times the amount of metal. If you've got 4 times the amount of metal income as your opponent, you are going to win. No matter what you build, to be honest with you. Even if you was to just spam T1 units, you'd probably still win with 4 times the metal income. Now these are interchangeable, but you need to make sure that you convey with your ally. So you're going to go into T2, you're going to hand out the construction vehicles to your teammates. A lot of the times you'll actually get a transport off your air player, so you'll buy a transport off the air player and you'll use the transport to hand them out because they are very slow to warp, like very, very slow. And then you're going to go into con turrets and you're going to build fusions, aphyses, and you're essentially going to get as much economy as possible. This is the air player. Now this is a very important support role. And what I mean by that is you are a supporting role. So a lot of the times if, say, there's a bit of a leak happening, say these hovers are about to come around here and they're actually trying to come up here to your eco player. What you want to be doing is, if you've got any bombers on hand, or say for Cortex, the Shuriken is very good. It's a paralyzer drone. They're very cheap, very fast. You essentially have to try and stop the run by if possible, because your air units are going to be able to catch whatever leaks through. But at the exact same time, you're going to have to hand out transports to the people that need them. And you are in direct competition with the enemy air player. Now, one of the easiest ways to lose this game is if you do not build enough fighters. If you do not have enough fighters and your opponent has a lot more than you, then you are going to lose. So they're going to come over. So a good example would be right now. This player has loads of fighters. He's got 28 fighters out. This player has 6. If this green player was to build bombers right now, just a couple, don't need very many, 4 or 5, send his fighters in to kill these fighters, and then he would have free reign to bomb anybody he likes. You come in, bomb the Geo, bomb the other air player, he could bomb the eco player, and chances are there is not going to be any AA, simply because the team relies on the air player to keep them safe. So that is something that you need to keep in mind when you're playing air. You can never have enough fighters. That's one thing I will definitely say. It is your job to potentially eco off the back of it, but that's only when you think you have enough fighters to keep your team safe. So oftentimes when you'll see a bombing run, you'll see, say, this player here is going to grab fighters and bombers, is going to bring them around, going to send them straight up there. It's your job to pull all your fighters over and stop that bombing run. It is very, very important. Because as I've probably mentioned in quite a few videos, beyond all reason, the economy is very volatile. So a single bomb, a single shot into all these, and it all goes up in flames. In fact, if you manage to kill this, doesn't have a lot of health, only 3,600. The entire base is going to go up in flames. Well, I wouldn't say flames, it's just going to explode. On the flip side, if you manage to take out a fusion in the backline, you are going to essentially eliminate this player from the game. And if you manage to pop an APHIS, which is an advanced fusion reactor, I don't think anyone has any up just yet, you are going to cause severe destruction. Now then, that is the guide for Isthmus. I'm going to transfer over to All That Glitters game and go through that one now.
Battle started.
Okie dokie. So we are over on All That Glitters. This is arguably the second most popular map on the game. it is mirrored, so you can draw a straight line down that map, down right through there, and this side is going to be pretty much the exact same. Now, as you can see here, there is a lot more ground to cover on the front line. And that means all 4 players here are going to be frontliners. This player here is going to be wanting to push units right the way up. And very similar to Supreme Isthmus, you are going to want to produce non-stop units. So even when you think you've got the front held, you really want to produce more units just to make sure and prevent any leaks. It's a lot easier to leak units through on this map simply because there is so much more surface area that you've got to defend. And again, leaking units can be very, very detrimental to your team that relies on you. This player here is got a lane, so he's going to go up there and he's going to protect that. So if I draw a box there, in fact, in post, I will go over and I will place lines for you so you can see. This player here has got his own lane, so he's going to be going up to here and he needs to be protecting about there. So he needs to be protecting that area there. This player here is in a bit of a difficult spot. This is arguably the hardest spawn on this map, and that's simply because you need to defend this valley here. Oftentimes you'll have units piled up here. If you can take this area here, you are going to be in a much better position, simply because this choke right here can be very, very tough to push through. So if your opponent, which is here, manages to get units up to here, then you're going to have a hard time. Now then, the backlines. This player here, because this spawn is quite difficult, this player I would consider to be more of a support assisting player, a bit more of a flexible player. So you're going to need to be helping this player to hold this area, sometimes producing units and placing them here, but it is more of a soft support. So you're not going to be holding the line on your own. It's going to be down to this player mostly. But if you see any holes, if you see any gaps, make sure that you fill that in and support him properly. As long as you've got that covered, you're free to do essentially whatever you want. So you can eco up, you can produce units and go for a push yourself, or you can go into T2. Either way, you need to make sure that this player is having a good game first before you do anything. In fact, as you can see here, this player's not actually producing any units. Sorry, he's producing units to there. So he's actually going to go ahead and walk his commander up already, just to help that player out. This one here, I would consider this to be a more of an eco spot. So again, if these players here, if these 3 players here have any issues, I would say it's down to this player to actually assist them. Again, this is very flexible, so make sure you work it out with your team, because occasionally some of these players can move over and help. Say this green player is having some issues, the blue player might extend his line a little bit more just to help this player out. But again, if there are any leaks, this player should be helping to clean it up. Now then, the most secure spots in this game are these 2 areas here. So you've got, this is reserved for the eco, whereas in Supreme Isthmus, they're often interchangeable. I would argue these are not. The reason this is considered the eco area is because it has a lot of space. So eco-wise, you can get avises down, you can get windmills down, and you've got enough space to actually produce them. This spawn here, as you can see, is kind of stuck between some rocks, and that's why it's considered the air position. The air position, it doesn't really need as much space as the eco, especially if the eco is deciding to go for the wind farm build, so he's essentially just going to cover this entire area in windmills. It's not the best in all that glitters because the wind is not particularly great, but again, it is certainly an option that you can go for. So it's this player here, once he gets his T2 lab up, he is the one that is responsible for handing out T2 constructors to all of his front lines, and if the supporting players have not managed to get their T2 up yet, then he should be handing that out to them. As the air player, you are in direct competition with your enemy air player yet again, so that is something that you need to bear in mind. While you are in a much more protected space, with actually the Mountaineer, it can block bombs, it can block nukes, it can block quite a bit of terrain. It can also even block radar. So if somebody's got radar, if an enemy places radar there, you will not be detected behind this mountain. As you can see there, it's only just a couple of ticks they've got through. Sorry, my apologies, stouts and a couple of blitzers, but they are doing quite a bit of damage. Props to this player for managing to clean that up and supporting, and props to the air player for actually producing a few shurikens to help out there. That is something that is very, very good. Because even though it might not have affected him, it is affecting his allies, and this is a team game at the minute, unfortunately. AVA is... you rely heavily on your team, and your team relies heavily on you, and that's the reason why these roles are so important. So if you're deciding to play your own game, so say you're spawning here like this player, and you're not pushing up the front, in fact he's building a bot lab on the front line, I don't quite know why. I understand that he may be a very new player to this game, but at the same time he has this player, and this player relying on him to hold his area. As you can see here, this player is not particularly happy with those tanks coming through. He has maybe gone a little bit too greedy, not recognised that the player in front of him is severely having some issues. But thankfully the air player is here with shurikens to paralyse this and stop it running too far. Yeah, it'd be nice if I saw them coming down. But at the same time, this is something that you need to try and get out of the habit of doing. And this is the main reason I made this video to begin with. There's a lot of problems on Reddit currently, where even lobbies that are labelling themselves as noob friendlies, noob as in newer player friendly. When players make a mistake such as this player, where say they don't know completely what they're doing, maybe they're just a little bit on the slower side, and I don't mean that in any sort of nasty way whatsoever. RTS games, if you're new to RTS games in general, they can be very, very daunting. There are so many different things that you've got to look at once, with regards to other types of games where you're often just sort of controlling one character, or say playing one person, playing one vehicle, and that's all you've got to worry about. Beyond all reason, as an RTS, is, as far as RTSs go, it's probably the most complex one that there is to date. Even its predecessor, Total Annihilation, or I'm not sure if you're allowed to call it the predecessor, but it's essentially what gave this idea to the people in the first place. I'd argue even that game isn't quite as complex as Beyond All Reason, simply because unit choice, how clean you can get your builds to be. It's so vast for a newer player that it's much better to guide them through it. And this is a fantastic idea. This is a perfect example. Not a good idea, mate. One blows up, they do damage to the others. So he's saying to this player, if you build a guard tower there and one dies, it's going to damage whatever's next to it. Unfortunately, whether this player hasn't seen this yet, or whether he's just not sort of... Okay, he's definitely seen it, so maybe he just doesn't really care, which is unfortunate. If you are a newer player, try and listen to the people around you, because they often do give very good information about this game. And if you're going to have the mindset where you don't really want to say, improve or support your allies, or listen to what your allies are going to say if they're saying it nicely like that, then you should maybe be playing with AI, maybe against some barbarians and stuff. The AI in this game is actually relatively okay. So as you can see there, again, he's just giving him a little bit of a point. 3.2 metal extractor, that's, I mean, it's essentially double bubble. You always want to be going for that. There we go, like that. Unfortunately, there is a big tank push coming down. This player is trying his best to defend Beptep here, but unfortunately Beptep is probably not going to have a particularly good day here. But anyway, that's just something that I wanted to highlight. It is circling around Reddit right now as quite a big issue where, say, players are labeling it as a noob-friendly lobby and then, say, kicking those players that aren't doing particularly well, or verbally abusing them, which it's not nice to see. As a community, we want this game to grow, and this game isn't going to grow unless we have newer players coming onto the community and we're going to teach them how to play the game and what's good about the game, because this player here is probably not really enjoying himself too much. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.